We're going to travel back in time, way, way back, about 10,000 years, to look at some of the very first houses humanity ever built. And what's so incredible is that these weren't just some simple huts. No, they were a truly revolutionary feat of engineering, built in a place called Jericho, long before things like concrete or steel or even fired pottery ever existed. So, this was the big problem, right? How do you do it? I mean, just imagine for a second. You want to build a permanent home, a village, a whole community, but your entire toolkit is basically just the ground beneath your feet and whatever plants you can find. That's the puzzle the people of ancient Jericho had to solve. You have to remember, for almost all of human history, we were nomadic. We were constantly on the move, following the seasons, following the food. So the idea of just staying put, that was radical. But once people started to settle down, they ran into a brand new problem. They needed real, permanent architecture. They needed walls that were actually going to last. And this shift, this move to a sedentary life, it changed absolutely everything. It was a total game changer. It meant you could actually store food, which, is what makes farming possible in the first place. It meant you could have specialized tools you didn't have to carry on your back. And maybe the biggest thing, the idea of home became a stable physical place instead of just a temporary camp. It was a complete revolution in how we lived. So how'd they solve it? How'd they get those walls? Well, the answer was an incredibly clever innovation, the sun-dried mudbrick. It was this amazing technology born from just making the most of what you have, turning simple mud into a reliable and, really importantly, a scalable building material. And what's so cool is that Jericho was just the perfect spot for this to happen. It was like a perfect storm of ingredients. You had a constant source of water from a spring, that's non-negotiable. You had tons of soil with just the right mix of clay and silt. And you had a hot, dry climate that basically acted as a giant free kiln, baking those bricks hard in the sun. The process itself was just brilliant in its simplicity. You mixed your soil and water, but here's the key engineering insight. You add plant fibers, things like straw. Now this acts just like modern rebar does in concrete. It adds tensile strength, and it keeps the bricks from cracking apart as they dry. From there, you just pack them into molds and let the sun do all the hard work. Okay, so you'll often hear this phrase that these ancient walls were built with no mortar. And when you hear that, you think, wait a minute, that sounds impossible. It creates this little mystery. How could these structures possibly have been stable enough to last for generations? Well, the truth is a little more interesting than that. So let's just ask the questions straight up. How do you stack a bunch of mud bricks into a sturdy wall if you don't have that crucial glue we think of today? What was their secret? Well, here's the thing. When historians say no mortar, what they really mean is no modern cement-based mortar like we use. Instead, they have this combination of really clever techniques. They stacked the bricks incredibly tightly together. They used a thin mud slurry that acted like a weak glue. But, and this is the most important part, they coated the entire wall in a protective layer of plaster. And this gets to the heart of the real engineering problem they were solving. It wasn't just about getting the walls up. It was about keeping them from washing away in the rain. That plaster coating was everything. Building one of these homes, you see, wasn't a one-and-done event. It was a continuous relationship, a constant cycle of maintenance and repair to keep the water out. All right, so now that we know how they built them, let's step inside and take a look at how they evolved. Because these houses weren't just crude shelters. They actually became these carefully designed living spaces that really reflected the changing needs of the community. And this table just shows that evolution so clearly. At first, they started with these simple circular dwellings. But over time, you see this shift to rectangular buildings, which, are much easier to add rooms onto. They even started adding stone foundations to protect the mud bricks from moisture in the ground. Their floors went from plain packed earth to these smooth, plastered surfaces, and sometimes they were even colored. They were actively designing their homes. And get this, there was another huge, maybe even unintentional benefit to building with mud. It's a fantastic natural insulator. The thick walls would absorb the sun's heat all day long, keeping the inside nice and cool. Then at night, they'd slowly release all that stored heat, keeping the space warm. It was basically an ancient and super effective form of climate control. So why does any of this matter? I mean, okay, mud bricks, cool. But the thing is, the invention of the mud brick house wasn't just some architectural achievement. It fundamentally rewired human society. This one simple technology had consequences that would echo for thousands of years. First, it literally anchored people to a specific place. A permanent home is the foundation for a permanent settlement. It allows you to invest your time and energy in agriculture, to store extra food for the lean times, and to start thinking and planning in terms of years and even generations instead of just what's happening this season. Second, you can't build a village alone. It just doesn't work. The process of making thousands of bricks, constructing all those houses, and then keeping them all in good repair, it required people to work together on a massive scale. So the very act of building the village also built the community, creating totally new levels of social cooperation. And finally, and this might be the biggest idea of all, this was the moment that human technology stopped being just about tools you could hold in your hand. For the first time, technology became a permanent part of the landscape. Humans began to create their own environments, literally reshaping the world to suit their own needs. That simple mud brick had profoundly complex results. It set humanity on an entirely new course. And it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What are these simple, almost invisible technologies in our own lives that are quietly reshaping our world right now?